The natural resources here is what brought Camp Lawton here. One of the tragic stories of the Civil War and man's inhumanity to man is the prison camps, both north and south. If we had a monument erected for the people that died in the prison camps, similar to the Vietnam Memorial, there would be over 55,000 names on it. 3,000 less than died from all causes in the Vietnam War. And here we are at Camp Lawton. Andersonville had real problems: overcrowding, a poor water supply, a very high death rate. And it involved, by the 5th day of August, only 26 acres of land. So John Henry Winder, in charge of all Confederate prison camps, will call on Captain Boyles and his son, Captain Sid Winder, and give them a task in early August. That is to locate another site for a prison camp from which they can move large numbers of the Andersonville prisoners. Just previous to this, General Stoneman had moved out with his cavalry from Decatur, Georgia. Mission destruction of the Western Atlanta Railroad, and then on to Andersonville and to attempt to release the prisoners there. He failed. A number of Stoneman's enlisted men end up in Andersonville and Stoneman in Camp Oglethorpe. So it's an emergency situation. They work fast, and they locate where we stand today, where this wonderful natural spring, over 30,000 gallons of water a minute, a water supply, which Anderson does not have an adequate. Lots of timber to build a stockade. A railroad intersection close. So governments can move fast at times. And this gets approved, the plan. And requisitions are given authorizing the use of Confederate soldiers, use of black labor, to begin work on construction of this stockade, which will be the largest stockade in the world at that time. 42 acres, almost twice as large as Andersonville. Instead of an inadequate supply of water, like in Stockade Branch, lots of fresh water. And the work begins. The thud of axes as trees are cut, shaped, and a stockade made of logs 15 to 17 feet long, buried in a trench 3 feet deep, almost a square, straddling the creek. Like at Andersonville, inside a dead line, 30 feet in from the stockade, scantling placed on posts. Like at Andersonville, every 50 feet, looking over the stockade, a pigeon roost, gates leading into it. Outside, bake ovens. And by the 12th day of October, men are arriving from Andersonville in large numbers. Soon a population of almost 12,000 people here. Many of them arriving very ill. Like at Andersonville, on the high ground commanding the stockade, 3 batteries. Eventually the Lyon Ford artillery will be transferred from Andersonville down here to man the guns, and the prisoners arrive. No quarters, like at Andersonville, digging caves, pits in the ground, some large enough to hold several, some large enough to have one. If you have your poncho, a blanket, put it on stakes, get a little shade. But it won't last long, because Sherman is coming. The march to the sea had begun on the 15th and 16th of November, and the Army of Georgia, his left wing, is approaching. On notification that the Yanks are in Milledgeville, and we're approaching, the prisoners will leave on to Blackshear, on to Columbia, on to Florence. And when the Yanks arrive here on the 3rd of December, the stockade is vacant. Nearby, a large mass graveyard, more than 670-odd Union dead buried in it. And Anderson and Camp Lawton, like Andersonville, like Florence, like Salisbury, becomes part of our legacy to the Civil War. But on the north, do not forget, they have their prison camps. Elmira, Point Lookout, Fort Delaware, Camp Douglas, and the list goes on. So it is fitting and proper that Georgia will take as one of their missions to protect and interpret this magnificent resource we have here for the history of our Civil War, for the natural history of the area, that magnificent spring. So on trips, on tours that I take, this is a place I always like to stop, because we have to remember that war is not parades, crowds cheering. There is a sadder and a darker side. And this interprets a role of the Civil War and the people north and south who lived and died in these experiences. For at Andersonville, related to this, we have that great monument there to American prisoners of war from the French and Indian War to Iraq. These men are all blood brothers who fought for the United States, either whether in the Confederate Army or the Union Army, or forebearers. And it's only proper that we recognize them and stand and think a little bit, like we're doing today. It's always a great pleasure to be at this spot.